Good afternoon, beloved, and welcome to this edition of Daytona Beach Radio. I am your host, Reverend Dr. L. Ronald Durham, Community Relations Manager for the city of Daytona Beach, Florida. I am so delighted today to have you tuned in, whether you're in your home, your automobile, your car, wherever you are. Every single week, we promise to bring you an exciting program with guests and timely topics that we discuss about projects and initiatives happening here in the city gorgeous. For today's program, you will have to wait to call me until my guest is done. We're working with one line today for our call in, and he's on that line. So if you have a question or a comment, put it on the Facebook page, and we'll get that on the air. And we're so happy for all of you who are watching us on Facebook Live. You get to see my face as well as hear my voice. Sit back, enjoy the conversation today, and of course, we're so happy to have you on the line. My guest today here on Daytona Beach Radio is Reverend Tony Deobil, and he's the Executive Director of Family Renew Community. I was blessed to meet Reverend Deobil when he was with the Salvation Army several years ago. And we had a crisis here with a homeless encampment in front of the county building on Beach Street. If you lived here that long, you remember it. He was very instrumental in helping me and the city during that time to get those folks into better accommodations than just laying on the street in front of the county building. And now he's working in a role in the same mission of ending homelessness with Family Renew. Welcome to Daytona Beach Radio, Reverend Deobil. Good to have you today.
Well, thank you. It's always an honor and a joy and a privilege to talk with you and share what's going on.
Yes, and there's certainly much going on when it comes to the homeless here in Daytona Beach and Volusia County as a whole. So there may be some listeners tuning in today, Reverend, who don't know you. So if you could kind of give a brief biography of yourself, I think that would be helpful to the listeners.
Sure. Well, I actually started my career working in healthcare. I ran large hospitals in New York and Pennsylvania. But then I had a calling into the ministry, and I just felt that, I still wanted to help people, but I wasn't sure what I was called to. And then the more I was around homeless folks, the poor, I realized that these were the disenfranchised. These were people that, unfortunately, the reason they become homeless is oftentimes misunderstood. And so I started doing work in these communities. I came to Daytona Beach in 2003, and I worked on staff at several of the hospitals and several of the churches in the area. I got credentialed, and as you said, I worked at Salvation Army. I worked at Calvary Christian Center, and I landed here in Family Renew because, I saw such an incredible need in homeless families. Most people don't realize the magnitude of the problem, and I say it this way sometimes, the magnitude of the problem in Volusia County in the state of Florida in the United States. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized, wow, these are areas that, number one, great need. Number two, I think there is solution to some of these issues. So I've answered the call and have been here at Family Renew Community for 5 years now, and it's one of the most rewarding, one of the most challenging jobs that I've ever taken on, and just, it's one of those things that day in and day out, the challenges are great, but when we have a family that succeeds and is doing well, I call that my $1 million payout.
Absolutely, that has to be very rewarding to see someone turn themselves completely around and are back to being self-sustaining.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of touched on my second question, Reverend, which was the problem of homelessness with and families with children in Volusia County in particular. Are you seeing as a result, because and I'm going to get back to this in a minute, which is the COVID-19 pandemic, but do you see any impact as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic and an increase as a result of people maybe losing their jobs, losing their home because of no income? Is there an increase now in families with children that you're seeing?
Absolutely. Thank God the eviction. There's been several moratoriums on evictions, so that kind of slowed that down. But back in before COVID, and again, this is one of those things that most people in our area don't realize. In Volusia County alone, there were 2,626 children in the Volusia County schools that met the definition of homeless. And it's one of those things that it's the best kept secret, or the secret nobody wants to talk about. But we have a dramatic issue here. With COVID, we've seen the need has increased. We see, we track right now. Family Renew has about 186 families with applications waiting to get in. We have 23. We have 32 apartments that and folks stay with us for 6 months. So when you do the math, even if we look at the 186, it's going to be tough. We literally get a couple of thousand inquiries on our webpage for people looking for help from us. So again, the issue is even graver. I suspect that as time goes on for the next several months, we're gonna see that need increase even more.
I would dare say so, because the crisis that with folks who have lost their positions, their jobs,
right.
That seems to be unfortunately on the increase, and hopefully that moratorium on evictions will help some to kind of eliminate some of the crisis that we are seeing. So let's get into the mission, Reverend Deobil, of Family Renew. What is the actual mission statement that your company, your ministry actually works under?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm going to read it to you because it's real quick. It's real succinct. It says, Family Renew Community is a faith-based organization that provides a safe, stable home for homeless families with children and equips them with the tools they need to be self-sufficient. One of the things that I often say, we're not a housing program. We're a restoration program. Like I said, the greatest thing I get to experience is when I see a family who came to us that were living in their car, we're living in somebody's garage, and we get to help them turn their life around. But it's by teaching them day-to-day skills. Unfortunately, some of the people we deal with have never been taught or parented with the basic life skills that we all take for granted that our parents instilled in us. And because of that, we're sometimes starting from scratch with families and teaching them. We treat each family individually. Every there's no one size fits all. Each family is unique, and the problems and issues that they're dealing with, are unique.
Hmm. And that kind of segues into my next question, which was whether there's a typical family that is served by Family Renew Community. And by typical, I guess I mean, are there certain traits that you see in people that come to your organization? Do they fall into a certain category, or is it more broad than that?
I love that question, and I love to share a little of my efforts and what I've been able to figure out. Sometimes when I'm talking out in public, I'll ask people to, and I ask them not to say it out loud, but ask them to think about who a homeless person is or who a homeless family is, and I'll oftentimes then turn around and say, okay, here's what I think you would say if you told me. Well, they're lazy and they're uneducated, and maybe they're drug addicted, or and I explain to folks that from studies that we've done and studies that we've had access to, only about 16% of people and families that are homeless would fall into some of those categories. And typically what we deal with is folks like you and me who maybe lost a job, there was a divorce, that there was a sickness in the family, and all of a sudden, the old cliche that most American families are 1 to 2 paychecks away from homelessness is what we deal with each and every day. What we try to do, and again, I said we have a few thousand inquiries, but we have 186 actual applications. What we try to do is look for the folks that need more intensive case management than just, well, we'll put you up for a month or two, and hopefully things will get better. We try to get the folks that have significant issues that are barriers to them succeeding, and then we work on those issues. Again, I think with COVID and the unemployment rate, we're seeing so many people that they never thought in a million years they would become homeless. Most of our families, and I say this all the time, nobody grows up saying, well, when I grow up, I want to be homeless. I want to be unemployed. But so many people are finding themselves in that circumstance. And again, number one, we try to work with them to help them understand they're not alone. They're not unique. And there are solutions, and there are things that they can do and we can do. One of the things I like to say to our families here is, we're not going to do it for you. We're going to teach you how to do it, and we're going to hold your hand while you do it. And it's amazing to see the life-changing, behaviors that in a very short time start to take hold, because, again, nobody wants to be homeless. Nobody wants to, look for the next program to give them money. There are some of them out there, but most of the folks we deal with are just everyday people who, maybe they didn't get parented as a child. Maybe they didn't get a whole lot of education. Maybe, they haven't had the breaks. Oftentimes I deal with young adults that have grown up being told, they're stupid, they're never going to amount to anything, and they live up to that expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And we do the opposite. We speak life into them.
Yeah, yeah, and that is so important to encourage them to know that this is not a permanent situation for them. That there is hope, and with the right skills and the right tools available to them, they can get back to getting themselves acclimated into society. Um, there is a program that Family Renew has, I understand, that offers services to assist families with children who are at risk, and I guess the key word is at risk
Right.
of becoming homeless. And in my brief work with the homeless, I think homeless prevention is probably the number one, well, if not number one, it's right up there at the top of ways that we can really tackle and address the homelessness issue. So, can you talk about your homelessness prevention program that you
Sure.
have?
Yeah. Well, right out of the gate, the thing that it does the most, it's the most cost effective program there is. We worked with a dad who was a contractor. He was doing well. Things started to happen. The jobs, stopped, and next thing you know, he and his family became homeless.
Hmm.
Now, that's not somebody that necessarily has to come into a transition program like Family Renew to learn new skills. He just needs a little help.
Hmm.
And by, helping him get resettled, helping him pay his rent, he was able to get back into the gear. The job kicked back in, and he did so well. Our program is geared towards helping families with children that are in jeopardy of losing their apartment or what have you. So we will, we have a bank of money that is provided through the Homeless Coalition and DCF, and what we're able to do is work with the family, find out what their needs are. Sometimes we negotiate with the landlord because we'll say to the landlord, "Look, we're gonna help this family, for the next month or two, and we want you to commit to not evicting them."
Hmm.
And most smart landlords will jump at something like that because they're like, "Wow, I'm not only going to get paid for the next 2 to 3 months, but I'll also, hopefully my tenant is going to do better."
Hmm.
So it's a good program. Like I said, it's probably the most cost effective of all the homeless. Whether it's rapid rehousing or transitional or homeless prevention is probably, when it works. Again, Dr. Durham, one of the things that if I've learned something over the 15 years or so of working with the homeless is, there's no magic bullet. There's no one program that solves all the problems. And again, it has to be unique to the individuals that we're serving.
Hmm.
And when we do that, we can figure out how best to help them and get them to stabilize and remain stable.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so true. And the that homeless prevention part of your program is really the key. And when my focus for quite a while was in the area of homelessness with the city, and many times a referral to an agency like yours or the United Way or Catholic Charities, just to get that person to that one payment that they needed to
Right.
assist them get past their, whatever that rough spot was. it made, in many cases, that made the difference. So and there's no panacea, I guess. There's no. I wish I knew the answer, because I'd write the book, and it would be a bestseller.
Absolutely.
If there was just one answer to how we deal with homelessness, it's really a plethora of solutions that have to be all implemented at the same time to get this problem under control.
Right. Right.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, my guest today is Reverend Tony Deobil. He is the Executive Director of Family Renew Community, and we're talking about homelessness and families with children who are homeless here in Volusia County. So, Reverend, what are some of the challenges? I know that families, of course, the main challenge is they don't have a place to live, but many times there are other challenges that are compounding their circumstances beyond just the traditional home that a person has. There are other factors that go into trying to help them. So what are some of the other challenges besides the roof over their head that you have to deal with?
Well, again, as I've said, oftentimes the families, the parents that we deal with, they come to us. They've given up hope. They maybe have not really been real motivated for most of their life. And again, they need someone to speak love and life into them. The other more practical issues is a lot of the people that come, the parents that come with us, oftentimes maybe didn't finish high school, let alone, went back and did career advancement training or college. And one of the things at Family Renew is, if you're an adult and you come stay with us, we require you to go and get your GED, and we help them pay for that. We help them, access it. We arrange for tutoring. And again, a lot of our families, or a lot of our parents, have never availed themselves of the educational programs. We work very closely with Daytona State College. They have the Center for Women and Men and the Fresh Start program. And they work with a lot of our clients to, again, just to start speaking into them that, there is a solution, or there is a future. The thing that always breaks my heart, whether it's the parent or the child, one of my favorite questions is, when you grow up, what do you want to be? And I asked that of a mom who was with us, who was in her late 50s. So it's not necessarily a question that I just ask children. And it always amazed me that most of the people did not have a goal in life. They did not have an ambition. Maybe they had it when they were a child, but all of a sudden, life just knocked it out of them. And it really speaks to where some young people are today. One of the other things I oftentimes say is we oftentimes have babies raising babies. They're very young people, and they don't have a clue. All of a sudden, mom or dad kicked them out of the house, and they're on their own, and they're just trying to swim, and nobody taught them how to swim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So again, the issues are I've been at Family Renew 5 years. It never ceases to amaze me. I think I've seen it all, and then somebody walks in with a new set of issues that I go, wow, I didn't see that one before.
Yeah, that's so true. No two people are the same, and
right.
You wind up where you are based on a lot of different factors that all come together and create that perfect storm in a person's life. So, Reverend Deobil, you mentioned the the list that you have, a tremendous amount of people who are making application, and you only have so many spaces. So how does
Right.
Family Renew prioritize the families that you serve? What are you looking for that moves a person up um, in the, up on the list so that they get a place to live?
Well, when I first came to Family Renew, we had kind of a first come, first serve basis. And, I realized very quickly that that isn't the best way to do what we're doing. And the way that I explain it is this: mom living in a car with her kids is in greater jeopardy than a mom living on the next the next door neighbor's couch. So we implemented a vulnerability score for everybody who applies to Family Renew. So when somebody calls us and we complete an application, we assess their needs. So again, if somebody's living, we had a family of 8 who were living in their car.
Mm.
It blew my mind because they had to take turns, shifts in sleeping, because it wasn't a really big car. So, well, that's someone, when we found out about them, we got them in off the street within about 3 hours. Somebody who is, a woman who just got divorced by her husband, who doesn't have a clue how to do, the normal day-to-day things, is now homeless with their children. We will try to get them in. So it really depends on the circumstance that they have. We use, it's kind of a nationwide standard vulnerability index. It's called the VI SPDAT, and it's pretty effective. I mean, it's in my mind, the going back to the old first come first serve just wasn't doing it.
Mm.
And the greater the need, the quicker they're going to get in here.
Mm.
And I think we're doing a pretty decent job of pulling the ones in that are in desperate need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's so important. And it's good to know that you have a plan um, to try to get to the most vulnerable, and have them coming into your program. What would you say your success rate is, Reverend Deobil, for Family Renew, if you had to kind of grade yourself?
Well, we actually, I think we're doing this. This will be our 4th year. We now track our families. So when a family leaves us, we are now staying in contact with them because we want to know how they're doing. One of my issues is if they're not turning their life around, if they're not being successful, then number one, we need to change what we're doing. Number two, why are we doing it?
Mm.
If I take a family from homelessness, put them, house them for a couple of, for 6 months, but then they're homeless again, then I failed.
Mm.
So we've been tracking families for 4 years. We touch base with them in one way or another twice a year, and we have a 94 to 95% success rate.
Mm.
Our families who come through here, they remain gainfully employed. They remain stably housed, and and that tells us what we're doing, is effective. When we see something that maybe isn't, that effective, then we tweak the program to make it better. We also track the earning capacity for our families. One of the things I say to families all the time, working at McDonald's is great, but managing a McDonald's is even better.
Hmm.
So we encourage them. Well, 83% of our families end up with greater earning capacity than when they left us. 94% of them go back for school of some sort, whether it's a GED. I had a mom who went back to Daytona State and became a police officer through the police academy. We've had people get their CDL licenses, and they go from making minimum wage to making a decent salary. And that's, again, that's part of our mission. That's part of our desire to see these families do even better.
Mm-hmm.
We started tracking, 3-4 years ago, because again, I wanted, when I talk to people and I say, here's what we do, and here's how I know it's effective, I can tell you anecdotal stories, and I can tell you hard, fast numbers.
Wow. Yeah, well, certainly 94 to 95% success rate. That is tremendous.
Yeah.
That speaks a lot for those who work with you and work to help those
Yes.
folks that come through your program. I don't know too many programs that, grant funders would love to see that 94, 95% success rate when people are applying for funding. So you kind of talked already about some of the agencies that you work with, but there's a term I wanted you to explain to our listeners, Reverend Deobil. It's called, it's the difference, I guess, between what's called housing first and rapid rehousing. How does that apply to Family Renew, and which one of those two models do you kind of follow?
Well, actually, I'm going to throw a third at you, and that's transitional restorative housing.
Okay.
But going back to your question, so rapid rehousing is where a family or a person is homeless. I mean, they have spent at least a night in a shelter, or spent a night, in the street or in their car. Then there's money to help them to get them reestablished. So it may pay for a deposit. A lot of times the people, even if they have savings, they don't have enough to get an apartment because, they need first and last months, and sometimes if you have a spotted history, they want a third, and you're talking thousands of dollars. Rapid rehousing helps fund that, so that they can get into an apartment, and it usually helps for a time period. Some programs may be 3 to 6 months. Some programs may be up to a year. Now, that's a generalized program. Housing First is built on the premise that if I can take somebody off the street and put them into a program or into an apartment, and get them jump started, that they'll do better all by themselves. It works when it's a good fit for Housing First. It works really well. The issue with Housing First is there are absolutely no barriers to somebody getting help, and that poses a bit of a challenge for folks that are homeless, because it presupposes that a family or an individual has all the skills that they need to be successful, and all you need to do is seed them with getting them started. And I think when it works really, really well. But as I've said, a lot of our families, and this is where the transitional restoration program comes in. These are the folks that you could, unless you want to support them the rest of their life, they're going to struggle.
Mm.
Um, they need intensive case management. Oftentimes, rapid rehousing always has a component of of case management, but not the intensive nature that a family renew does.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we assess their needs and then we educate them and we encourage them and we get them back on their feet. So when they do leave us, they're in better shape.
Mm-hmm.
Now we are actually looking at a rapid rehousing funding where we can take some of our families who have done well, ready to move out on their own, and the rapid rehousing money may be able to kick in and help them, pay that deposit.
Mm.
One of the things that Family Renew is families that stay with us must go to work, um, and they must put at least 50% of their salary into a bank account so that when it's time for them to move on, um, they have some seed money to get started.
Mm-hmm.
This new rapid rehousing money may help us to do that even faster, and the faster I can turn a family over and I can put a new family in because the need is so great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great explanation of those two different types of addressing the issue of homelessness. And when I was working more closely with the Coalition for the Homeless, um, in my role with the city, they kind of embrace that housing first model. And as you mentioned, when it works, it works. But there's so many other, um, you know, intangibles that people face that it
Right.
makes, to me, it always presented situations where I thought it would be difficult. So that's a great explanation, Reverend. I appreciate that so much. So let's get back to um, the COVID-19 pandemic. You do have people living in close quarters in apartments. Um, since March, the CDC guidelines have kind of outlined social distancing and frequent hand washing, wearing a mask. What's going on with Family Renew in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I'm glad to report that we never shut down, we never curtailed what we do, but we had to be extremely careful because, as you said, we're a community,
Mm-hmm.
and as such, we have to put the protections in place. So. Um, Up until recently, and we're actually considering shutting down our campuses again from outside. Um, but what we did was we went to virtual meetings with clients, virtual meetings between staff, virtual meetings with the United Way. United Way is one of our strongest supporters in Volusia County. So we stay in contact with them through the virtual meetings. So we've been and quite frankly, we've learned some neat things that I think after COVID's over, we will continue to embrace because it is a little bit difficult. I mean, one of the things about Family Renew, we have three campuses. We have one in Holly Hill, one in Daytona, and one in DeLand. And that's a logistical nightmare sometimes when you're trying to do something.
Hmm.
But through COVID, we've picked it. We fixed it up. We have not had an outbreak on any of our campuses. We've had positives, but what we do is we isolate the families. Um, they can go to work, they can go to the grocery store, or if they're sick, we will oftentimes take care of those needs, and we'll deliver groceries or what have you. But it's by doing that and teaching, this is the other thing that I love about this. We use these as teachable moments with folks, because a lot of our folks, oh, COVID's not that bad. Oh, I had one mom whose daughter turned positive, and she was off gallivanting, and I said, "You got to stay in your apartment." And she said, "Well, no, I didn't test positive. It's my child." And we were able to, again, a teachable moment. Well, you might be carrying the disease, so we need you to be careful. The other, and this was a very interesting development. So many of our families, which are required to work, lost their jobs during COVID. And I remember I saw one of the dads who worked on a road crew who lost his job because the work had dried up because of COVID. And I saw him, and I went over and I talked to him, and I said, have you been looking for another job? Well, I figure unemployment's enough, and they'll call me back when things ease up. And I said, no, this is an opportunity for you to find an even better job. And he looked at me like, wow, I didn't think to do that. And he did it, and he found an incredible job that I'm going to say would paid like 2.5 times what he was making doing the others. So, again, even in a crisis, we can help folks learn and grow and rise above their circumstances, because that's what these folks are doing. They're there because of circumstances, but they just didn't have the wherewithal to get out from under it.
That's so true. That is so true. Well, Reverend, I kept you longer than I wanted to, so I wanted to kind of wrap up with my final question. And I can get to the city news that I've got to share with our listeners. How can people assist Family Renew? Do you have volunteers? Are there donations that you accept? How can people kind of help what you're doing with your mission?
Sure. So the best thing to do is log on to our webpage, which is www.familyrenew.org. There are multiple things that you can financially we can always use financial support. Although we take some government support, we have opted to stay away from some of the restrictions that come with that. So we try to get money enough to keep us funding. As far as volunteerism right now, we're kind of limited because, like I said, we're reconsidering closing down the campuses from outside. But we do operate a thrift store in Ormond Beach. It is the Secret Attic. It's located right on Granada at the beach side, right where TGI Fridays is. There's a small shop back there that brings in a lot of money, and we, the more volunteer help we can get there, and we take all of the CDC precautions and safeguards, but that's the place. One place for folks to help us out. Once COVID is lifted, then we will issue lists of needs that we have, because we're one of the most cost-effective groups out there, and we have minimal staff, and we can always use skilled and dedicated individuals, because something I say all the time, I can teach you the skills, but I can't teach you the heart. And we're always looking for people that have the heart to help families with children that are homeless.
All right. Well, Reverend Deobil, thank you so much for being my guest today. I appreciate all that you're doing, and I know the community does as well. And I think as we move forward and get past this pandemic, you'll be even in a greater position, I think, to do more for the Volusia County community. And so God's blessings upon you. I'll have you back again at some point, um, so that you can tell us a little bit more about what you're doing at Family Renew.
Well, again, I appreciate it, Reverend Durham, and anytime, it's always an honor and a privilege to talk to you.
Well, God bless you, and thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.